Believe it or not, it's been 2 years since the NR200 first launched, and since then we've done quite a bit of content on this case, but I've never quite condensed all that we've learned about cooling this case into one easy to follow video. So today I'm going to try and do just that. Welcome to Machines and More. It's been a very popular case, gateway to SFF for some, an endgame build for some of you, and for me personally, it's been a fabulous case, and I've gotten tremendous utility out of this case as the main test system for this channel. In most regards, the cooling performance of this case is best in SFF, but you do have to set it up properly. So today let's do a TLDR version, a quick review of what we know so far, and I promise to keep things concise. So in this video, I'll spare you the data points and the graphs. If you do have time, for sure, please check out those videos, but I'll keep things high level here and easy to follow today. So what we'll do is talk through optimal airflow setup for the NR200. I'll sprinkle in some guidance if you are going to be using the P version with the glass panel as well. We'll talk through the optimal airflow setup as well as some cooler recommendations for your desktop ITX build. Speaking of desktop, this video does have a sponsor today, and before we get started here, let me tell you about our sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by the FlexiSpot CanaPro Bamboo Standing Desk. This is the EC8 55-inch version. The CanaPro features a bamboo desktop, and with the version shown, you can comfortably fit an NR200 build or two, your monitor, and all your peripherals on your desktop. Proper posture is critical to gaming and working comfortably, and switching between sitting and standing can give your body very helpful variation throughout the day. The CanaPro makes it easy to accomplish that and allows you to dial in your preferred heights via the premium keypad design. This keypad features touch-sensitive controls accompanied by a clear digital display, 4 user-configurable memory presets, a child safety lock, and even a USB charging port. The desk is capable of handling up to 275 pounds. I hope your NR200 is lighter than that. Laminated bamboo is a great desktop material because it's a durable work surface with high hardness. The color is neutral, and this desktop features a hard-wearing satin lacquer finish, free of any odors out of the box. So whether it's an NR200 or some other desktop ITX build, you'll have a luxurious feeling work surface ready to match. FlexiSpot is doing a Tech Day promotion from September 7th to the 9th, up to $200 off. I'll have my link down below, so please go and check them out. All right, so NR200, whether it's liquid cooling or air cooling, you're going to want some case fans. And in fact, the best airflow configuration is always going to be the same, with one tiny exception that we'll talk about later. We'll start with the most important, which is the top fans here. I'd always try to get 2 top exhausts up here if you can, but you may not be able to due to your board or your cooler, but you should always at least be able to place this one right here, right over the power supply. So definitely don't leave that one out. The optimal airflow direction is always exhausting out the top. The simple reason is that, at least in the vented version, the fans at the top will pull makeup air into the case, either from the side or the bottom. So it'll benefit a tower cooler because of the side panel there, and also your graphics card because that's going to be sitting down here, and that's going to help pull some air through the bottom panel directly into the path of the card. Now, related to the bottom panel, bottom intakes, as you see, like I've got here, under a hot graphics card, do help additionally. You won't see as much of a benefit if your card is under 175 watts or if it has a nice big cooler. So if they don't fit, it's not the end of the world, and it's not imperative. For a card like this 3080 XE3, it's downright helpful. When you do have a top-down air cooler, an intaking fan directly over the heatsink helps a lot. For a tower cooler, the side fans are really not a big help, and obviously if you have an EIO or radiator mounted there, that spot's already occupied, and we'll get to that setup later at the end, but those fans should also be intaking there. Finally, there's that 92mm spot here at the back. Unless you're using a small 92mm tower cooler, I'd absolutely skip that one. A lot of times you can't even fit it. And with 120mm tower coolers, it often impedes the cooling since it'll create turbulent airflow in that position. As for the choice of fan, the included 120mm fan from Cooler Master is absolutely fine to get started. A cheap upgrade here is the Arctic P12, and a higher end case fan recommendation would be the Be Quiet Silent Wings 4 that we just reviewed, since it is a very good balance of price and performance. And you really don't need to spend too much for a case fan. So while there are more expensive options, not always necessary there. Okay, so air coolers. Let's start with tower coolers. With a tower, you can either have the cooler fans exhausting air out the back, like this way, for a rear exhaust setup, or you can have cooler fans go the other direction, like this way, for a rear intake. The best orientation, it's going to depend on your choice of graphics card and whether or not you are using fans at the bottom. For a card with a big flow-through section on the cooler, like the NVIDIA Ampere Founders Edition cards, you're definitely going to want to set that tower up as a rear intake, so air coming in this way, since otherwise the exhaust is going to feed the hot GPU exhaust directly into your heatsink, and that's really, really, really inefficient. If you're using bottom fans with a hot GPU, like a 3070 and above level, the rear intake setup is also very helpful here, especially if you're using the glass panel. However, if your card has a moderate board power, like say with a 6600 XT, then I'd go with the rear exhaust setup. Cooler recommendations here for the vented panel. The best cheap tower cooler that we've tested here on the channel is ID Cooling's SE224 XT, and it works well with Ryzen 5s and the like, medium priced coolers. Your Scythe Fuma 2 is a good choice, especially the newest version. Pretty good dual tower there with the vented panel. High-end reference grade cooler, well, technically this one exceeds the spec for the case, but the Noctua U12A has always worked really, really well for me. Get this one in Chromax for the most luxurious finish. This is a top-end, the best 120mm single tower cooler you can get right now. For the glass panel, the Scythe Mugen 5C, it's a good fit and a good price. Just like the U12A, it's technically too tall versus the specified clearance, but lots of folks, myself included, have run this one without any issues, and I've never noted any interference with any of the glass panels I've tested. With the release of the Noctua D12L, you also have a higher priced option that is a guaranteed fit, but is a lot more expensive, and it only marginally outperforms the Mugen 5C. Top-down coolers, that's another option here for air cooling. They're also going to be a great option as long as you're using the vented panel. There's not too much to speak of in terms of fan configuration. You're going to want the air directed at the motherboard. It's a top-down cooler. And that's also great for board and RAM cooling as well. As I mentioned earlier, a side panel fan directly over the heatsink helps, but another one next to it, that's largely unnecessary. If you have a lower TDP CPU like an Intel 12400 or Ryzen 3600 or 5600, you should be fine with something like the Scythe Big Shuriken 3. It's a very reasonable price. For hotter CPUs, and I think that upcoming 7600X is going to fall into this category because it is spec'd at a higher TDP, you can use Noctua's C14S. That'd be a really good bet here. And especially if you can get that cooler fan on the side panel and put an extra 120mm fan under the heatsink, that's a really good setup too. And it's largely immune to the GPU's exhaust. With the glass panel, I typically don't recommend top-down coolers since the strength of these coolers comes from the large open intake surface area that the vented panel gives you. Okay, lastly, AIO liquid cooling. Well, you have a few choices here for a radiator. First off, you can put 120, 140, 240, or 280mm radiator on the side, which is going to be your easiest configuration. And in that scenario, you'll run the radiator fans as a side intake. And that's the best setup from a performance and user comfort perspective because you don't have hot air blowing out at you. Pretty simple. Cool air goes in the side, and your top exhaust fans, they take that hot air out, right? For a 240 or a 120mm rad, you do have a potential second option though, and that is mounting it at the bottom with the use of a riser cable to vertically mount your GPU. Now, my impression is that this is going to be a lot more popular with your users that are using the glass panel due to the visual aspect of the setup, because you might like how that looks, and that's the reason you set it up that way. And with the glass panel, the best configuration is going to be a bottom intake with the radiator fans right there, and you're still keeping those fans at the top as a top exhaust. Now, very few of you will run the vented panel along with the bottom mounted radiator due to the extra hassle and the expense of the riser cable, but I will mention it anyway because maybe some of you are going to want to try this. It's going to be a unique airflow setup. While the bottom intake and top exhaust, it actually works just fine here. For the best GPU thermals, like we tested with the Enertrainer P Max, you can also run your bottom radiator as an exhaust, and you're still keeping that top exhaust, and that feeds the makeup air to the side-mounted GPU, so it really helps GPU thermals. AIO recommendations for a side-mounted unit. There are a lot of decent units out there, but I tend to shy away from the Asetek units because of the pump noise. One of the best tested units that fits in this case is the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2. I will caution you, this is a tight fit. There's no flexible fittings at the pump head. The 240 is a safer bet in terms of fit, although the 280 can sometimes marginally work. But I also really like the Cooler Master PL240 Flux, although that one is a bit on the pricey side. But honestly, there's a lot of 240s that are pretty decent. As long as you dial back the pump noise, you might be very happy with an Asetek unit as well. For a bottom-mounted rad, a decoupled unit like the recently updated and recently tested Be Quiet Pure Loop FX is going to be the best choice from a longevity and a noise standpoint. But do note that inline pump makes it a difficult fit if you ever want to switch to side mounting. Alright, I did it. I summarized the findings from what seems like a gazillion videos into 11 minutes or so, so I hope you enjoyed it and you find this content useful. Please give a like if so, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll leave the links for the stuff we discussed down below. And hey, thank you again for watching and your support of the channel here. Bye for now.